or districts in Somerset. So we'll have a look at the SAVVI project. It's one of those projects that's funded by the local digital collaboration units program. So SAVVI, as you can see there, stands for a scalable approach to vulnerability via interoperability. So it's about using data to help vulnerable people. So SAVVI is about data and data standards, and our objective is to agree the right standards and get them adopted by local authorities, departments, and suppliers of data services. SAVVI, it's led by Tameside Council. That's one of the 10 unitary councils of Greater Manchester. So Phil Swan from the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, he's our project sponsor. And Shelley from Tameside is the project manager. Shelley's on the call, so maybe we get a wave from Shelley, and thank you very much. So Shelley's going to try and answer questions in the chat as we go along. And I'm the product owner. So we had a phase 1 of the SAVVI project. Just as we were emerging from the first wave of COVID, and in that phase 1, we listened to how councils had responded to the COVID experience, see what problems and solutions could be applied more generally to vulnerability. We ran some workshops with councils, particularly about COVID, but we also contrasted that to homelessness prevention, because again, we're looking for common processes and data treatments that could apply to vulnerability in general. So that phase 1, it started to build a picture of the types of vulnerability which seemed to follow a similar pattern. And from our workshops, we came to understand the problems that councils face when they're trying to find vulnerable people and coordinate that support. Councils need to know which organisations have got. Sorry, am I still on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, something happened there. So councils need to know which organisations have got what data, and the information governance position that might allow that data to be used to find vulnerable people with a particular vulnerability. And having got data, well, we need the standards and the vocabularies to join it up. And having assessed people's needs, well, we then need to be able to track actions across partners and be sure that people are getting effective support. So we listened to how some councils have found people that might have needed help during the early months of COVID, and these are the types of attributes that some councils used. And you can see that this is information, it's drawn from all sorts of systems and partners. And we contrasted that to how councils want to find people at risk of becoming homeless. And again, you can see this is personal and sensitive information from many sources. Now, we also worked with Huntingdonshire District Council. So they also have got a project that's funded in the local digital collaboration unit. So that's called SENA. Now they're presenting on Friday in the Digital Leaders Week, so I do recommend registering for that. So in their phase 1, they did research to evidence what life events can lead to crisis. And they found what they call a snowball effect, where if some of these occur over, say, an 18-month period, that can lead to a need for support. So in our phase 1, as a result of those workshops and listening and learning, we proposed a model process, a set of data standards, and a catalogue of how councils have used data to find and support vulnerable people. So all of this that I'm going to show at the moment, that's at our website. I think I had the link on the previous slide. There it is, savviuk.org. So first of all, we proposed a model process. I can't walk through it in any detail now. Do enjoy it on the website, but it kind of starts with defining a purpose for vulnerability, then running a risk index to find vulnerable people, then moving into having found those vulnerable people, assess needs, from assessing needs, providing support, um, through to a kind of dashboard and outcomes framework to report the effectiveness of that. And then ultimately to learn from the data that's been collected, having gone around that cycle, to improve the whole process. And then we defined a concept model to go with that process. Now, I don't know if you can get your nose close enough to the screen to actually see the see the concept model. Do go to the website and you'll see that we have this concept model explained and a whole narrative about how it works. I've listed some of the key concepts here on the left, and yeah, so hopefully they're the kind of concepts you would expect to see in our model. And some of these concepts appear in other models. So as this is about interoperability, we're also keen to see how we can reuse data and standards wider than just the scope of what SAVVI is. And in fact, we've just seen, I enjoyed the launch of the open referral standard. So that's a good example of how we want to join up with other standards and kind of join up at a conceptual level. We turned our concept model into a logical model, and again, I know you can't see that. It's all fully described at the website. So we've kind of just added fields and vocabularies, data types, and so on for each of the concepts that we've described. Again, it's all on the website. I'm showing here, bottom right, just one example of one of the entities. This happens to be the contact event entity, and you can see fields and data types and permitted values and so on. Right, now we also want to visualize how councils have used data to find vulnerable people. This is one example of using the Civil Contingencies Act, if you can see that in the bottom right as an enabler, to use some of the revs and bends type data attributes. Have a look at the top left, during the COVID, so bottom left for the purpose. And with this is another data model for describing data reuse, and we'd like to build a navigable catalogue so that councils can see what other councils are doing, and that's a start point for each council reaching their own opinion on a lawful and ethical use of data. And we captured a list of these during the phase 1 for COVID. And so that's what you're seeing here, just a list of the kind of attributes that some councils were using for COVID, and you can kind of click on any one of those and get to that diagram and see the dynamics of that. And in phase 2, which I'll talk about in a moment, we're looking to establish data use for other vulnerabilities. So that was what we did in phase 1, and we're now in phase 2. And phase 2 is about testing and proving the processes and the standards with real councils. So we're working with Huntingdonshire District Council, I mentioned them earlier on, and we're also working with North Yorkshire County Council. And the idea is to produce 2 case studies and indeed to start to build that catalogue for real. Now, interestingly, both of those councils also want to link up to the open referral data standard as a part of the supporting people. So that's great for what we're trying to demonstrate as a kind of interoperability between those the different scopes that those standards cover. Now, so this is Huntingdonshire. I mentioned Huntingdonshire earlier. In their phase 2, they're going to be building a service blueprint, and that lays out how they will assess people and make smarter recommendations and referrals. Now they're particularly looking at the LGA's LG Inform definitions to define circumstances and needs. So we're making sure that our standards work well with those. And Huntingdonshire are looking to us for the standards and the information governance support, and the links out to other data and processes. Working with North Yorkshire, so they've chosen to focus on school readiness. But in general, they've found that the COVID experience has just raised the kind of internal expectations of a proactive role to support vulnerable people. and they're looking to us to provide to them that kind of repeatable process. So, perhaps having explored school readiness, they'd be ready and they'd have built a profession internally and partners to go on to look at other types of vulnerability. So it is about that repeatable process for them. It's about working with partners, and it's about being able to report internally and externally on the kind of effectiveness and the outcomes of the work that they're doing. Now, to support our pilots, we've appointed some experts in some key roles. So we have what we call the SAVVI coach, and the idea of the SAVVI coach is that they are about explaining and unpacking the SAVVI process to the pilot or authorities, and indeed the SAVVI coach is going to be capturing the case studies in a way that then other councils can come along behind and see if they can see that it's an experience that they would want to follow. We have what we're calling the SAVVI Tech. I saw, at least I think Mike's on the call. I didn't see if Ian or Simon were on the call. But SAVVI Tech, that's from Porism. And they're about working with those councils. Hello, Mike. They're about working with those councils to explain the data standards, but also to feed back to us whether data standards work well or not. Oh, right, Ian is on the call, so I skipped over Digital Gaps. No, Digital Gaps we've appointed as the SAVVI coach, and Ian is texting to us saying hello. Mike is from Porism as the SAVVI Tech, and he's going to be working with those councils to try and embed the standards into those councils. And we've also got what we're calling the SAVVI IG, and that is some support that we've appointed from both Bolton and Greater Manchester Combined Authority, some information governance specialists, and that's about helping those councils go through the right steps to get to their own opinion on the lawfulness and the ethical use of data. Right, but so that's our team, and we're sending them off to the pilots, and best of luck to work with those pilots and have a great success in piloting the SAVVI approach with those councils and seeing what we learn from that. But we're supporting our support, if you like, by creating a number of forums, and this may be an offer for some people on the call. So within those forums, we already have an information governance. We call it the Information Governance Quality Assurance Group, and that's where a number of IG leads from other councils have already come forward and say that they want to join us in a SAVVI group. A SAVVI group to just explore and unpack how information governance plays around this whole vulnerability, data reuse story that we're trying to do. So we're very grateful to 7 or 8 councils have already come forward and want to be a part of that group. We're just about to start what we're calling our SAVVI Tech group. So Tech UK have offered to host that, but it is open to any kind of technology supplier who wants to take part. So this is an opportunity for tech suppliers, not only to listen to me just going on and on about SAVVI. We're more interested in their stories, actually. We want to give them a forum to feed back to us what they think, either their existing products or their own ambitions, or what data standards they want, or what leadership they want to be able to make addressing vulnerability via technology a success. Because ultimately we're very keen to support the tech industry to either take on our standards or for us to be influenced by their standards. So if you are a tech kind of company, do email Shelley. I'll give her an email in the end. And the opportunity is to join our technology group. We're intending to start what we're calling a services forum, because we're also aware that there are a number of organisations out there whose offer is to work with councils to find vulnerable people or low-income families, or that kind of thing, and to so for those kind of companies, we also want to learn from them. They are the experts in this field, probably more than we are. So we want to learn from them, and again bring them together into a forum and learn from them, listen to them, and accelerate take up of these kinds of services in a more joined up way. So there you go. If you recognise yourselves in any of those kind of forum activities, and please do contact Shelley. I'll give her email address at the end, and we'll see how we feed you into that. Now, as well as our pilots, and that really is the focus of what we're doing at the moment, which is to work with those pilots and really work this through and drive out those case studies. We're also reaching out to other initiatives, and we're being contacted quite often by initiatives that are also looking at vulnerability. I've listed some of them here, and we've been in contact with all of these, and we've got a bit of activity going on with these. So there's a story on each of these, and I don't have time today, but we often discuss these in our blogs. And again, I've got a link at the end about what our blogs, how you see our blogs. We tend to do a couple of blogs a week, talking about the pilots, or indeed what we've learned during the week from these kinds of organisations. So I wanted to mention how we're running the project, if you're interested in that, because I think this kind of project has been a growing experience for us taking part in it. We try and use Agile, and we often return to our business case just to iterate it and rethink what success is. We're holding regular stand-ups within the project team, and we're using our Trello board to work with that. And we try not to micromanage our expert teams. So hopefully, I was mentioning Mike and the IG group and the digital gaps work. We try and step them off with a set of tasks and what we're looking for them, but really let them go and make a success of it. We're also using the theory of change, and that's particularly been brought to us by our funders, the local digital collaboration unit, as a part of our monitoring and evaluation. So that's about tracking and measuring our objectives through our inputs and outputs and impacts. So we're in phase 2, and phase 2 is about testing and proving this at a very local level. It's about working with those individual councils and seeing if we can show that our standards work and our processes work, and that there is information governance to go through to make all this work. But I think ultimately, as we talk amongst ourselves and talk with councils, the ultimate story here is where this starts to join up at a more national level. So there might be, this is ultimately about national infrastructure. It's about a trust framework in which data is handled as data as a service, and it's about working together to analyze and understand what works. What are the right risk indicators that find the right people, and what kind of interventions work well. So I think that's ultimately the journey that we're on. So I hope you enjoyed that. I think I tried to cram 2 hours of material into 20 minutes. So so I think I've done all right there. You can find us at our website. That's savviuk.org. I guess you might get these slides as well, in which case there's some other links here. You can see a video of me going at a slower pace, I think, through some of the material that I've already talked about. And again, there's a link to not only the work that we're doing that we publish at the website, but where we do our blogs, and particular work on our IG framework, which is becoming an even greater focus as we work. So I think there's an opportunity for your questions now. We've probably got 10 minutes to go through questions, and Shelley will be very happy to answer them. So I'm looking forward to seeing the questions and Shelley's answers.
Yeah, there are a few questions
Okay.
on the side. So hang on, Kelly is asking, are we using a poll data model, so person, object, location, event?
That's the police, isn't it? The police use the poll approach.
They do.
And so yes and no. We've actually mapped our standards to the smart city concept model, which is poll on acid, I think, if you like. So the smart city concept model, which is an ISO standard, but we in iStand UK had a great hand 2-3 years ago in building that, covers some of the same ground as poll, and just try and get that read across and rationalization of what on the face of it look like very separate ideas, and say yes, but that's the same thing. So we tend to talk about, so certainly events and location, object we call item, I think, so but it's the same idea. And of course people also breaks down into people and households, but we also build into there status, which is a way of mapping and understanding circumstance and needs, and we have objective in our model as well. So I'm interested in the question, actually. So if you'd like to speak to us directly about those kinds of upper ontology type joining up mechanisms, that's what's on our mind too, because ultimately we don't just want standard after standard after standard. We need some way of making them all join up. So thanks for that question. That's something that we might want to follow up on.
Kelly also has followed up with a point. She says it would be great to have a civic citizens data store so that private, vulnerable, older citizens can have a safe store for health data which is outside of the public sector applications. This to enable self-care and remote monitoring, e.g. gate sensors, pillboxes, etc., outside of when a commissioner will fund such a service. Data standards are brilliant, but if there is no data, then the standard is meaningless. The longitudinal record and the ability to see vulnerable people requires engagement before crisis. Both third sector and individuals will increasingly hold this data in the future, and the standard needs to map to customer movement, not just statutory. So I don't know if there's a question in there.
I think we just need to make sure we capture that as a question, because that unpacks into a whole project. That's our phase 3 pitch done right there. There's a few things in there. I mean, the aspiration that people have control over their own data and can choose who to share it with. I think that's an aspiration that we share in local government. There are some moves that way, but there have been for some time in central government, and I get involved from a standards point of view in some of those trust framework type personal data store type discussions. So I agree that kind of thing would be great. This doesn't work without data is also very true, but I think we were aware before we started, and we've become more and more aware the more and more we look at this. The information governance is key on this. The lawful use of data and the ethical use of data is becoming even more a focus for what we do. Anyway, I can't remember what the rest of the question was there, but I think I agreed with it all. So I'd be interested to see if we capture that, and perhaps Shelley, that's something you and I can just walk through what's being said there next time we do our time boxing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Kelly also talks about wanting, we also want batched APIs so that we can call one microservice instead of many. And I think that's definitely something that we've considered and talked about as well. And I think if Kelly is willing, it would be great to engage Kelly outside of this, perhaps as part of our group, because there's quite a lot. Yes, please. Great. I will certainly be in touch.
So for us, APIs are at the heart of what this is about. We want to make data much more real time and on demand. And whereas much of this vulnerability work has been based on big slugs of data, here's the whole county's list of people with this particular thing. That's not you don't want snapshots of data that's 6 months old that contains 90% of people that you don't have an interest in. All that's the old way. So we are certainly very focused on real-time data, consent-based, and access to data. It is the area that we're going to ask Mike to pick up on, because we haven't defined the APIs yet. We've defined the logical model and the concept model from which APIs can be proposed, particularly with the kind of JSON payloads that would be and fit into that. We might, however, find ourselves in phase 3 for making that, and that does feel, when I was talking about it ultimately becoming national infrastructure and whatever, that that would be an API-led kind of discussion.
We're 3 minutes out. Do we have other questions at all from anyone? Oh, was that a question? If not, I'll hand back to Sarah.
Thank you very much, Shelley. Yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining us. If you do have any further questions or thoughts, then do get in touch. Happy to share the slides if you're happy with that, Paul, and we can share contact details. So happy to keep those communications going with you. But otherwise, thanks for joining. We did mention Paul mentioned the Senna chat earlier. So if you fancy following up on that to see how Senna links in with SAVVI, their talk is on Friday within the schedule. So do have a look if you fancy it.
And I've put Shelley's email address on the screen here. So do feel free to email Shelley on anything you heard today.
I think the subtext of that is don't email Paul, just email me.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of Monday, and yeah, have a good one. Thank you.